Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 169 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about Tesla, the software and AI development company. A lot of folks keep still, Tesla's just a car company. And I think I'm just going to refuse to even call it a car company at this point. Tesla doesn't sell cars, they sell drive data collecting wheeled robots. And this is like some 44 double D chess moves that Elon is playing. This ain't no friggin' accident. And if somebody asks me who's gonna win the race to full self-driving, is it gonna be Waymo or Cruise or any of these other idiots? And I'm gonna say Tesla. And if they say, okay, well, how'd you come up with that guess? I would reply in the immortal words of Firuza Balk from Waterboy, that ain't no guess, that's what it's gonna be. And the reason is simple. They have the most data. They have the most driver miles of data than anyone. It's not even close. I get my daily Tesla hype from Stephen Mark Ryan, and you can listen to him for about 3 days, and I'm sure you'll hear about it. But the point is, they have the most data, which means they're going to win. And the lead is increasing. So no one is catching up to Tesla in any way, shape, or form. And once they have full self-driving figured out, they're going to use it. They're going to use the software. They're going to sell that software to everyone, because eventually, when it probably won't even be legal to drive your own car at some point. But even before then, there's nobody that isn't going to want the increased productivity of not having to deal with traffic. It's going to just return hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of hours, hell, maybe even a day of productivity back to people. And this stuff don't happen by accident. But once he gets this figured out and he's printing money, selling FSD to all of the other car manufacturers, they're just going to use that same program that lets their wheeled robots navigate the physical world, and they'll just plug that into Optimus so that their humanoid robots can interact with the physical world. So being first to FSD means they're going to be first to humanoid robots. And when there's 8 billion of them on the planet, even if you want to just say, okay, Tesla only has 10% of them, that's 10% of 8 billion. So 800 million. And actually, might as well just say there's going to be 10 billion people by then, probably. So maybe a billion. Tesla is going to have a billion Optimi running around. And the margins at that point will just be ridiculous. So, and it's obvious to me that he's using some type of either reverse thinking, where you imagine the easiest ways that your goal can fail, and then you do the opposite of that. Or else maybe he's just starting with the goal and reverse engineering everything step by step back from that, because everything has fallen into place and it's not a coincidence. And so what I mean by that is, using reverse thinking, if you said, okay, well, I want to start a new car company, how can I make that fail? And if your goal was to sell $25,000 electric vehicles to every person on the, almost anybody on the planet, you would immediately say, okay, well, I need to raise so much money that I can just go into mass production immediately on this $25,000 vehicle, and have these tiny margins, and be able to just drive the cost of production down on the vehicles to get them out the door for $25K. You would just fail, because you can't get the dozen factories or whatever that you're going to need to be able to produce the millions of cars, and you're not going to be able to get the prototype into production. So that's how you would fail. So he did the opposite of that instead. The end goal is the 25K car and the robotaxi fleet and all of that crap. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to build an expensive car, sell it to rich people. And once I'm printing money with something that doesn't have to ramp up into the millions of production, then he can use that money to build another factory and then introduce, then they came out eventually with the Model Y. And that became the best-selling vehicle on the friggin' planet. And now they're executing whatever, part 2, 3, 4B, whatever the hell it is, of their master plan of, transitioning the world to sustainable energy. And this stuff is clearly not an accident. He's not just getting lucky that he picked the perfect order to develop these cars in. The Cybertruck was probably a little bit of just kind of like a, I don't know, like, fuck you, I do what I want kind of thing. And my reservation actually just came up, and I'm like, nah, I'm going to sandbag. I'm going to wait for all the bugs to get worked out of that bad boy. I don't need the, I forget what they call it, the Founder Series or something. Yeah, I don't need that action. I'll wait for full self-driving to be ready for it and all that jazz. But he's clearly playing chess, and he's got, like, when they were when they needed more chips and there was a chip shortage, all the new car manufacturers couldn't produce enough cars, and Elon's like, all right, fuck y'all, I'll just make my own chips. So now Tesla, they're not going to be supply constrained because they're looking years into the future. They got contracts for all of the crap they need to make their batteries. It's a stupid, saying or whatever, but Elon's playing chess and all of these other people are playing checkers. I mean, even some of these people that clearly have brilliant, programmers and whatnot working for them, but so when I said that he sells data collection devices, so these Waymo and Cruise, they actually have to outfit these vehicles with all of this equipment, and they're taking losses on all of the stuff. But Tesla is banking and printing money on industry leading margins. So people talk shit because Tesla's 20% margins came down a few percent. But like Toyota and Volkswagen and all of these other half-assed legacy, they're the best car makers on the planet, but they're half-assed compared to Tesla. They would kill for double-digit margins. It's like 4, 5, 6% or something at the most. I can't remember the exact number, but they're just trash compared to Tesla's margins. And the market shits on Tesla because his margins dropped from like 20% to 18 or 16. I don't even know what the hell they are right now, but they're head and shoulders above anyone else. And it's hilarious to imagine that he's actually selling cars to people that they want. But what he really needs is not the money from the cars. He needs the data from them driving the cars. So he's developed a compelling product that people want, but it's really a Trojan horse for him getting all the data. And even with Optimus, he still talks all that shit about he overpaid for Twitter. He underpaid for Twitter because now he's all of these people that are putting together their large language models or whatever. and he can just sell himself all of Twitter's communications to build a language model for the Optimus. It, Twitter is like the worst deal of the century, but 20 years from now, it's going to look like a bargain. So all of this stuff is by design, and it's hilarious to me whether he gets credit for the actual ideas or not. He's clearly engineering all of this stuff masterfully, like just master of puppets or whatever. He's just got all this stuff attached to his little puppet strings, and what I guess that was a really long ass winded way of leading into the way that I have tried to implement reverse thinking. So in my little small way, when I learned how to sell options, let's just look at MicroStrategy. Actually, I've got it up on Tasty Trade already. Actually, I'm jumping way ahead of myself. So a lot of times I talk about collecting 1% a week, 1%, 1%, 1%. And 1% a week adds up to 52% a year, which just curb stomps index funds, dividends, any of the buy and hold crowd. Just it's not even close. And those are just the guaranteed returns that you get from selling the option contract. That doesn't include any call away value that's built in here. So if I owned 100 shares of MicroStrategy, I should probably do something a little cheaper because not everybody can relate to this, but it's fun to look at the numbers. And even if you built like barely $20 of call away value in here, you could sell this for insane premium. That's like the mid price is like $5,000. So that's almost 4%. But at the money, you could get 4%. So 4% a week for 52 weeks, it's over 200% returns a year. Now, you are sacrificing all the upside, and I'm only just saying this as an example. I never do this. But I have sold at the money puts, and the returns are very similar there because I don't really care if I get assigned. And so I could collect almost, holy shit, what is that? Basically $7,000 a week selling at the money puts right now. So that's is that, I'm sorry, what did I say? 7. Okay, I can't read. I don't have my glasses. That's 5,700. Sorry, no. That's 4%. A little over 4. 4 times 13 would be 52. So, yeah, 4 point something. But that's very aggressive, and I usually just try to under promise and over deliver and shoot for 1% a week. However, and then putting all of the profits back into buying shares, selling more covered calls. But let's look at something that's way more affordable that I trade. So Riot. I was going to start the wheel and selling at the money put for next week. I can get 3%. But even just 1%, like if I go down to the 9 strike, I put together a little chart. So if I only had 10 grand and I was going to buy 100 shares, $1,000, and I only had 100 shares of Riot, and I sold a covered call and I got 1% premium, I'm going to get about $10, and then I can buy one more share of Riot. Did I say Hut? I meant Riot. And then if I do that for 100 weeks, now I have an extra 100 shares. I have 200 shares. getting 1% a week, I can buy 2 shares a week. And then it only takes me half the time to get to another 100 shares. It can take me 50 weeks. Now I have 300. And this goes on and on and on and on until I'm buying, 50 shares a week. Then it only takes 2 weeks to get to my next 100. And eventually, boom. Now I'm buying, once I have 10,000 shares and I'm collecting 1% a week, 10,000 times 1% is 100. So I can buy 100 shares. If I'm buying 100 shares, now I can sell another covered call and get another 1%. So it's not just 1%. It's 1% plus 1%. Or excuse me, 1% plus 1% times 1%. So now it's exponential growth. And I call this reaching critical mass. Now, granted, getting 1% a week would take 11 years to get to this point. But instead of earning 1% a week at this point, it goes up to 67% because 1.01 raised to the 52nd power, because we're going to get 1% a week for 52 weeks, is now 1.67 your money. So 67% returns instead of 52% returns. This is when it really starts to get insane. But the reason why I mentioned being able to get, 3% selling at the money puts, and actually, pie in the sky stuff, it was 4% for MicroStrategy, right? If you can get 4%, which it's very hard to get, but this is just fantasy here. This is just fantasizing about how good it can get, as fast as it can get. If you're getting 4% a week, you can buy 4 shares a week. And then once you get to 200 shares, you can buy 8 shares a week. When you get to 400, you can buy 12 shares a week. So it's going to take 109 weeks, so just over 2 years, right? Just over 2 years to reach critical mass if you're very aggressive in selling premium. But I generally don't do this because I like to build some call away value in, especially on something like a MicroStrategy, which I do expect to be 5-10 grand easy by end of 2025, because I expect Bitcoin to at least double by end of 2025. Not financial advice, and anything could happen, black swans, et cetera. But if the Bitcoin cycles hold, that's basically my base assumption. But collecting very aggressive premiums like this could get someone to critical mass in just over 2 years. I've already reached this stage, but I didn't just start with $1,000 and 100 shares of a $10 stock. I was probably at I was like halfway there already. And at the time, when I first started, I didn't even know I was doing it, really. I hadn't worked all this out. And when I say this is kind of a product of reverse thinking, when people ask, well, why would you sacrifice maximum upside at all? Why would you sell a covered call? So which covered calls do I have for this week? I think I have like 1,400 strikes. Yeah. So I built about 15% call away value into these, and I collected right here. So my trade price was 1,200. So like almost 1%. And the price was like $12.20 or something. So what is that? $180 worth of call away value. So maybe 15%. And the reason is because I'm so bullish on the stock. I want to be able to capture some of this upside. But when people say, why would you limit your upside at all? If you think MicroStrategy is going to 5,000, 10,000, why would you limit your upside at all? And the reason has to do with the reverse thinking that I was talking about. Because the absolute easiest way to not make any money in the stock market is to buy something and then the price goes down. If that happens, and I'm just watching a spider crawl across my wall. If that happens and you just buy and hold and you don't have any more money to buy dips, then your account just goes down. And it's the stock market. So the prices of things can go down. MicroStrategy went up bigly to like $2,000, but then went down to 1,000, went back up to 1,700. It's back down to like 12 right now. So just because I'm 99% sure that Bitcoin is money for the next 500, 5,000 years, then MicroStrategy will benefit greatly from Bitcoin's, pumping and going to the moon. It is not promised. So I'm supremely confident in Bitcoin, like, as much as you can be and still have an open mind, like 99.9% sure, Bitcoin is the future. To the point that I would say at least 80% of my portfolio is Bitcoin. And some Bitcoin maxis are probably like, bruh, I have 100%, or I'm leveraged to like 150%. But 80%, between MicroStrategy and my Bitcoin holdings, and the 20% is probably just like Tesla. I've got enough Tesla to just at least put a dent in the algorithm so that Tasty Trade's algorithm isn't pissed off at me that I have this huge MicroStrategy concentration risk. They've actually denied me some MicroStrategy purchases because I had too much concentration risk in MSTR. But where the hell was I even going with that? So, yeah. So number go up is not promised. So what can you do to do the opposite of just buying something that goes down? Well, you can lower your cost basis. The way you lower your cost basis is to sell a put against the asset, or to own the 100 shares and sell a covered call against the asset. Every time you do that, you lower your cost basis. So if I lower my cost basis by 1% a week for 100 weeks, then I will have collected 1,200, excuse me, 1% of this would be $1,281 a week times 100 weeks. There's another 100 shares of it, which means my MicroStrategy cost me nothing in 100 weeks if I sell a covered call every week and collect 1% premium. That means now my MicroStrategy costs $0, and it doesn't matter if MicroStrategy goes to $10 a share, I'm still up because my cost basis is $0. And then if I keep selling 1%, my cost basis starts to go negative. So that's my thinking. That's my ultimate answer of people. Why would I sacrifice maximum upside even on something like MicroStrategy where I'm just irresponsibly long? I've got shares of MicroStrategy on margin, and I don't know. I have a little bit of cushion here, but I would say if MicroStrategy fell below 1,000 potentially, this could get real dicey, especially since I started protecting myself against to the upside with all of these leaps. You can already see that I was buying these when MicroStrategy was like at 1,400. So I'm down like 1,500. Let's see, what was it? 55. Yeah, down like $3,000 a piece on these leaps, down $5,000 a piece on 6 of these leaps, and down. No, I just bought these, so these are just even money. But these are to protect me against the upside so that I don't actually get my MicroStrategy shares called away. If MicroStrategy rips past my 1,400 strikes and goes to 1,700 or 2,000 again, I can sell off these leaps to afford to pay for the roll. But it's just funny. The stock market will always act to give you maximum pain. There's a little theory about that, I think. And so I didn't have these leaps when MicroStrategy ripped to 1700. I had the 1400 strikes. So I had to pay 30 grand to roll them. And so then I started buying these leaps to protect myself. And it did work. I sold a couple of these $5,000 leaps for like 12, 15 grand, something like that. So I made a little bit of money on those. But I've been hodling them ever since. And so the 5 grand leaps went up to 15, and now they're back down to 2 grand. So I try not to be emotional with my trading, but the sting of having to pay 30 grand to roll that contract led me to probably over-insure myself, maybe. Because I'm like, oh yeah, these leaps, maybe they'll go to 20 grand or 25 or 30 or whatever. And, then of course MicroStrategy doesn't cooperate. And I started dollar cost averaging and buying more of these leaps as the price fell. But the price just kept falling. I think my original price on these was like 15 grand. So I bought 2 more when MicroStrategy fell, and then I bought 2 more when it fell again, and I got my trade price down from 15 to 10. So I've been dollar cost averaging this down. But I keep going out to farther expiration dates because MicroStrategy has fallen so far that these leaps are actually becoming more and more affordable at longer expiration dates. So I'm kind of grateful for that. This is 200 and, what is that, 30? I can't read it. 230 days. So I refuse to hold these probably any less than 60 to 90 days to expiration. I will sell these off for whatever I can get, basically regardless. And then I'll do something with the money. But I don't expect these to rip past 3,800 in 150 days. I don't know, maybe 190 days, maybe by 250 days. That's possible, but not guaranteed. So February of next year, 3,800 could happen. And at that point, I would be presented with the decision of whether to just sell this for profit or exercise them. But I have a feeling that if if MicroStrategy is over 4,000 a share by then, I'm not going to have enough money to buy the shares. Like, I can't exercise that. So to me, leaps, you buy leaps to sell leaps. I know some people are looking forward to buying these MicroStrategy leaps so that they can exercise them and make them go out on the market and buy them as kind of like an extra fuck you. But if I had an extra $400,000, I would just buy 200 more shares of friggin' 300 shares. Yeah, I'd just buy. Yeah, what would that be? Yeah, hell, if I had 400 grand, I would just buy 300 more shares of fucking MicroStrategy now. I'm not going to keep cash and dry powder just to be able to exercise. Anyway, so I don't see how that makes sense. Anybody who's got that much cash lying around that's licking their chops and gonna force somebody to go out and buy the shares at the market price, why wouldn't you just own a bunch of it now? Anyway, somebody explain it to me if they can. So that's my reverse thinking. So I want to set myself up with, a compound interest type of scenario where my profits are not just additive. So the 1% a week is 52% returns a year. But if I can get to this critical mass, which I have already done, but I'm sharing this to me, these are realistic goals. This is not like a get rich quick scheme. I'm not saying you can start printing money in a month. There's probably some accounts that can show you how to do trend following or momentum trading or whatever. But this is easy mode. It took me 40 minutes to roll all my calls on Friday. And I collected, what, 2,400 in premium just in MicroStrategy alone. The covered calls on Tesla were $260 a pop. That's another grand times 4 contracts. So I basically did 90% of all of my trading in under an hour on Friday. So this is, to me, this is still active trading, but it's as easy mode as it gets. And I kind of make it even a little harder than it has to be because I sell weeklies. I look, the premium's a little better on weeklies, so I sell weeklies. But I mean, if you want to go out to 45 days to expiration, right here, 41 days, 48 days, you can just roll these every 2 to 3 weeks, once a month. You could even go to 60, I suppose, but I prefer, I would never go over 60 selling covered calls. I know there's some weird hedging strategies where if you buy a call and sell a call 6 months out, it's some kind of synthetic stock thing, but I barely half-ass understood what the hell they were talking about. But this is just easy mode. It's simple, but it's kind of just chipping away and getting a little better every week, and eventually your additive gains can become exponential gains. And it's not a huge exponent. It's not like it's doubling every week, but going from 52% returns to 67% returns is pretty nice. And that's just the guaranteed returns. And that's why I build this, I build some call away value. So I'm not sacrificing all the upside. I could if I got a little bit greedy with the premium. If I wanted to get over to this side and say, okay, I'm going to collect 3-4% a week and buy more shares a week, that's valid. But I'm so bullish on MicroStrategy, doing that scares me a little bit. So maybe I should have covered that at the beginning, but anybody who's still listening, it's really simple. So talking about something cheap like Riot, if you don't have shares, just go here. Could say sell a put, could say short a put, could say write a put, it could say sell to open. I love to make things confusing. And just make sure you're selling the put below the strike price, or excuse me, below the underlying share price. And then review and send. Done. Doing it on Robinhood. Actually, I just added some CLSK. The reason I did is because now they trade in pennies. I dumped my Mara. They can go fuck themselves for mining like Caspa coin or some ridiculous horse shit. But same thing. User interface on Robinhood is much simpler for new traders. But this is like 4%. 40, that's 64. Yeah, this is like 4% returns you can get at the money here. Selling a covered call. If I owned 100 shares, see, this is trading at 16. So if I wanted to build 10% call away value in, that's $1.60. So let's just round it off to $17.50. I could sell the CLSK covered calls at the $7.50 strike. That builds in almost 10% call away value. So you would profit up to $17.50 if the price goes up that high. And you can still collect 27 cents, which is 1.5% premium. You get a little greedier with it and collect 2% here and collect $1 worth of upside, maybe like 7%, 6%. 6% call away with 2% premium here, guaranteed. This would allow you to buy 2 shares of CLSK a week. 50 weeks later, you got 200 shares. And eventually, you would get to critical mass and increase your returns. And if you got $2,000 and you want to sell CLSK, you can still take the $27 and buy 3 shares of Riot. So you could use CLSK to build your Riot position. Since Riot is the cheapest mining stock that I utilize, anything too far under $10 a share, it's hard to get premiums. So I know there's some good miners, I think, that are at the $3, $4, $5 range. Iron was in that category before it pumped, but Iron trades in nickels as well. But you could collect $30 in premium off CLSK, pick up 3 shares of Riot. Then it would only take you 33 weeks to get to your next 100 shares. Now you have 100 shares of CLSK, then you got 100 shares of Riot. Now you're selling covered calls in both, which means it's going to take you even less time to get to 100 shares of Riot. All right. That's how I view Tesla, Elon Musk, reverse thinking. And this is how I kind of implement it in a Bitcoin derivative themed reverse thinking money printing machine. And the reason is to reduce cost basis for a higher chance of success. I want to reduce my chances of failing as much as possible. All right. Happy Saturday. Be good, y'all.